Hello class, welcome to Surgical Procedures 1, also known as 1441. This video is going to look at Chapter 10 under the section Classifications, focusing on clamping and occluding instruments. I'm on page 249. Surgical Technology for the Surgical Technologist, a Positive Care Approach, 5th edition. Alright, so clamping and occluding instruments are designed to occlude or constrict tissue, and the book took an opportunity here to describe the anatomy of a ringed instrument. However, I think this could also go along with the grasping and holding ringed instruments that we discussed in a previous video. But anyways, we'll go ahead and discuss it now since that's what the book wants us to do. Let's look at this hemostat. Okay, so hemostat, we're going to start from the top and go to the bottom. Also, the anatomy of a ring instrument is on page 249, figure 10-7. So I'm right there. Alright. So, we've got the tips, the long part, tips, jaws, box lock, shank, ratchet, ring. Tips, jaws, box lock, shank, ratchet, rings. So we'll begin with the most common instrument ever. Out of everything. It just happens to fall into the clamping and occluding category. However, this thing is used for so much stuff. It is the hemostat. Now let's break down hemostat into medical terminology terms. Hemo being the word root, and stat being the suffix. Stat is going to mean like stopping, controlling, and hemo means blood. So these guys are intended to stop blood. So if there is maybe a artery that is injured in surgery or maybe from a trauma, and the surgeon sees that vessel is bleeding and they need it to stop right now, and if this, of course, you got to go with the appropriate size vessel, you'd use the appropriate size instrument. They could use this to temporarily stop the bleeding. It's used for so many other things too, but that's just an example of taking it literally with hemostat. All right, so it's not all that big, you know. The hemostat, can you see these serration? Oh. So your hemostat has these serrations. Notice how they're going like across, and it goes for, and their serrations only go so far down the jaws. There's another instrument that looks very, very similar to the hemostat, and it's often called the hemostat all the time, and it's the cryo. They look pretty darn similar. I'd say your major differences are that your cryo jaws may be longer. A lot of times they'll be more tapered at the end, even more than what this one is showing. Okay. And then the serrations, yes, they're going straight across like that. They're horizontal, but the serrations go from the tip all the way down to the box lock. Remember that other hemostat, the serrations only went about halfway. So in your lab test, when you're going to have to identify these things and spell everything right, you're going to be allowed to manipulate these things and pick it up and compare it so that you know that you're writing the right name down. Okay? Now, mosquito. like the bug, it's small. It's very similar to a hemostat. In fact, it does the same thing as a hemostat. It's just smaller and would be more appropriate for smaller vessels. Tonsil. Around here in West Texas, we call this a tonsil or an Addison tonsil. In California and some other places, I'm not really sure. My experience was in California. I was not working there. I was on a mission trip, and I was doing surgery with a surgeon from California, and they kept calling this a Schnitt. I had no effing clue what they were saying because I was never taught that this was a Schnitt, but it is. It's a Schnitt. But around here, you're going to hear it called a tonsil. But be familiar with both, because I don't know what's going to show up on your boards. Is it going to be Schnitt? Or is it going to be tonsil? I bet you want to know how to spell Schnitt, because it sounds a lot like something else. Where did I see this? I am looking at my instrument book, but not at the same one that you guys have, because I left that at home instead of bringing it up here to do my video. But I would love to spell that word for you. Let's see. Oh no, I'm gonna find it. This video is not gonna end until I find it. What if I look it up in the back? I think they even have it as Schnitt in the back. Okay, the way you spell it is S-C-H-N-I-D-T, Schnitt. Hemostat. So anyways, tonsil. So, comparing it to our normal hemostat, it's longer. It does do the same stuff that a regular hemostat would do. It's got similar tips, jaws, but the main thing is that it's longer. Your hemostats really aren't going to come in a longer version. The longer version is going to be the tonsil, Schnitt. Okay, and so these are longer, and the jaws are kind of similar, right? Even when looking inside, it has the serrations that go horizontal, and it only goes about halfway down, almost 3/4, 2/3. So that's a tonsil. When would we use this? Well, when we need something to do the same thing that a hemostat could do, but we need it to be longer. There's a reason why they call it tonsil. It would fit back there pretty good to grasp the tonsil, and maybe use that number 12 knife on the 7 handle, maybe. Anyways, let's move on to the next one. Peon. P-E-A-N. It does come in different sizes and lengths. And here it is. To the untrained eye, it's just going to look like another darned hemostat, but it's not. Let's hold up the hemostat. To new students, this gets very confusing. Everything in this grasping and occluding, these first, handful of instruments, get very confusing to students. So you're really going to have to make sure you work on this so that you can be successful, because this is the basic information. Hemostat, peon. Major differences, because these are some that people get confused pretty quickly, pretty easily. Major differences. Your peon, which is this one, is going to be way thicker. These are some pretty thick jaws, so you would use it on heavier tissue, right, because it was thicker. See, even like side to side. Peon, hemostat. Okay, another thing about your peons is that the serrations are going to go all the way down. They're still horizontal, but they go all the way down to the box slop. The next question is, well, if that's the case, how do you separate it from the cryol? Because the cryol looks very similar to the hemostat. The main way to tell those apart is that the serrations go all the way down in the cryal, and in the hemostat they don't. So let's compare the cryal to the peon. Still, the peon has just heavier jaws. They're just wider and they're thicker. Yes, they both have the serrations going all the way down to the box lock. But, like, see, just even the jaw, you can tell from the inside too that this is the peon, it's just bigger. The peon comes in, you know, a longer form, and they may call this a Rochester peon. It's a lot bigger. Jaws are definitely bigger. There's no way of getting this mixed up with anything, I hope. However, you may also hear this referred to as a chest peon at the clinical sites. I've had worked with a surgeon who called this a chest peon, and a lot of that had to do with if they have to put in a chest tube into a person's rib cage, into their thoracic region. They will make the incision, and they may use this to dilate that incision a little bit, and then they'll take a chest tube, which is going to be like a big long tube, and then they'll kind of clamp that chest tube into this, and then they'll guide that chest tube into that incision into the thoracic cavity. And so, ergo, chest peon. But the real name is a Rochester peon, and that's the name you're going to need to know, along with all the other names. Right angle. Very similar to the tonsil, except one has, it's not exactly a right angle. We're not going to get all picky and weird about it, but we're going to call it a right angle, okay? And so it goes at a right angle. And that's what makes it special. These come in a lot bigger form, like big, for vascular, and they may call that a mixture, which we'll get to in a different chapter. So those right there were just very basic instruments that are going to be in most of your general specialty sets, or yeah, general specialty sets. So, and then I'm just going to expose you to some of these other ones. For example, intestinal clamping and occluding instruments that we'd use it on our intestines. They also come in different sizes, shapes, forms, lengths, and then so according to your book, it says that most vascular and intestinal clamps have atraumatic serrations. Okay, we know that. That run along the length of the jaw. So I was showing you horizontal on all of those other instruments, but when they say down the length of the jaw, of course this one, and see how it goes from the tip down to the jaw, down to the box lock, these serrations. See, it just goes all the way down. I call that more of a horizontal serration. They're saying that most of those are going to have that horizontal serration, but that's not exactly entirely true, just because I've got some instruments right here that are intestinal instruments that do not do that. But you can still tell the difference between an intestinal and the other kind. But you know, these for the bowel, I'm going to show you 3 different ones. They don't have those aggressive teeth on them. They just have these serrations. And yes, according to the book, most of them are going to be horizontal, but this in particular just happens to be I think I'm getting this. I think they need to be vertical. I'm sorry. So if they're running along the jaw, it would be vertical, like up and down. I think I used the wrong word a second ago. I'm not even sure. But I don't want to start the video over. So, but anyways, these are horizontal. These are vertical serrations. Whatever. Here's an example. Here's another example. It's more like a curve. See? And then here's the one that I was showing you earlier that has the vertical serrations. Those are intestinal clamps, so they fall into that category. And then there's vascular clamps that also fall into that category. And these are definitely going to be more delicate. The ones I have here are smaller, But they make this in a bigger size because we have small vessels in some areas and bigger vessels in other areas, okay? So, but here's just some examples of them. See how thin they are? They're funny shapes. Look at this tiny one. But like I said, they come in a lot bigger sizes too. You even got this bulldog. I don't know why, but I like this one. Maybe because it's about a dog. A bulldog. Or it has the name of a dog. So anyways, another example of a clamping and occluding instrument. So I think at this time, that is everything for the clamping and occluding instruments. Thank you. I'll see you all later.